Next thing we need to do is to actually have the stars displayed as the buttons. So I already have the images ready for us, so I'm going to get them and put inside of our assets. So click on assets. I'm going to go drag and drop. So I'll move those to 2x. All of these numbers, so 1x, 2x, 3x, that's all about the resolution in which these apps will run. So each different devices have different resolutions. So the higher resolution, the higher the number is. So 3x is for higher resolution. In our case here, the 2x will work just fine. Okay, so we have our empty star and our filled star. Let's go back to our rating control. Inside of our init method, we need to add some code right before our for loop here. So right after that, we're going to create variables which will hold our two images here so we can use them in our code. I'm going to say let filled star image be equal to UI image. Again, we need UI image class in order to get our image. In this case, what we need to do is just use the name. So say name as a string and pass in the name of our first image. In this case, it's going to be filled star, and we conveniently named filled star. So say filled star. So make sure the this name here is exactly the same as the name we have for our star. So as you can see, it says filled star. So we are indeed in good hands. We'll do the same for the second one. So let empty star image, use UI image again. So we're gonna say empty star. Perfect. Now we have our images in our variables. So inside our for loop, just right after where the button is initialized, say button. So we're gonna start setting up certain properties, attributes to our button here. So buttons dot set image, right? And you can see the set image method here requires the actual image and this state. Okay, so set image, just say enter. So the first one is the first image. So we're gonna say the name. We're gonna just go ahead and use the empty star image, and the state we're gonna just say normal. What this means is that when they open the application, we want to set the first image normal state, in the normal state, to be the empty start image. Let's do the same again for different states. So say button dot set image. Okay, again, we're gonna call this field start image. To enter. So the state we want to say selected, because we want, when it's selected, we want then to show the actual star. So the field start image. Going forward, say button again, set image. In this case, we're going to say again field start image. This state, pass in an array because we want to have different options. So in this case, we're going to say dot highlighted. So in cases where the button is highlighted, we want the field start image to show, and we also want that to happen when is selected. And we pass in an array. We know it's an array because we have these square brackets. Okay, and let's get rid of this. We don't need this anymore. In fact, let's just delete all of this. And again, make sure all of this is right underneath where we instantiate our button. Okay, let's give it a run and see. Okay, there we go. Okay, now there's a problem here. On press, this is happening here. So we need to get rid of that background, right? So what we need to do, because we now have images in our buttons, we need to go ahead and get rid of a background color. So what we need to do is say button dot adjust image highlighted to be equal false. So we're just saying we don't want the background to happen when they click. So run again. That background that was happening is gone. Perfect. That's good. All right, so now it's time to actually implement our tap button pressed, our rating button tapped here. For now, we just had this button pressed, but that's not our end goal, because our end goal is to have users being able to actually rate their book, right? So when they click this one, it should show this should be filled with the actual star. If they want to go ahead to 5, and all of them should be filled. Okay, so that's the logic. For now, let's go ahead and get rid of all of this. Back here, if you go back at the top, we have this rating here to be 0. So we created this property in our rating control level class, right? So we can use anywhere we want. So now we're going to start using that. We're going to go ahead and add this rating variable here and set it to the index of the button. Again, remember the idea here. Let's go back to our simulator. The idea is we have all these buttons, but we don't know which button has been clicked per se. We need to be able to track which button has been clicked and do something with that particular button. In this case, if they click on 2, we know that we want to fill these 2 stars. If they do 3, we know they have to fill all of them, and so forth. So for that, what we can do, we're going to go say rating, right? That variable we created, which is an integer. It's going to be equal to rating buttons. You can see rating buttons here. It's got square brackets, which means it's our array. If you go back here, as we create these buttons, we are actually adding to our array, okay? As you can see, that's what we're doing here. So now we are using that array. So we're saying rating buttons. We want to go and say dot index of. We want to go and select an index and get that value of that index. So as you can see here, index of, say just tab or enter. And now we have to pass in the actual element we're passing in, which in this case is a button. Okay. And let's go put a exclamation point here. That way we don't get running into issues. And then we're going to say +1. And finding and returning the actual button that we're talking about in the array. And we have this force unwrap operator, this exclamator, and just to make sure we actually get an actual a real button from our array, from our index, we force this unwrap operator here. Now we add 1 because we know our array starts from 0. Let's go ahead for now, just print and say rating, enter. Let's give it a run and see what's going to happen. Okay, let's click on this one. You see, it says that's the number 1, number 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now we have a way of identifying what we are clicking, which is exactly what we need. We're going to create a function here, a helper function, to help us with something very important, which is we need to update the button selection state. I'm going to name this update button selection states. Okay, it doesn't return anything, so it's a void. So for inside here, we're gonna go start with a for loop, right? So we're gonna say index, say button, in rating buttons again, dot enumerate, right? So we're getting the everything from our rating buttons. And now here, what we need to do, we need to do something that if the index of a button is less than the rating, that button should be selected. So let's write it here. Let's say if the index of a button is less than the rating, that button should be selected. The logic we need to write here is this. We know we have 5 buttons here. So if the index of button is less than the rating, so if we click on this first one, that will be rating 1. Well, 1 is less than 0 because the index is actually 0. That way that means we need to select this one. That's the logic we need to write. Because we know everything on array starts at 0, but we said here, if you look at rating, we are adding 1. Okay? So that's what we're doing here. So we're trying to make sure that every time they click, so if we click the first one, we know, okay, they clicked number 1, that's rating 1 and index 0. That means go ahead and select that one. What we do here, we say button.selected is equal to index is less than rating. Now you may ask, so okay, this, if you click on this selected, at the top you notice here bool, which means this requires a boolean. But we don't have a boolean here. You're right, explicitly we don't have a boolean, but implicitly we do have a boolean, because remember here we are doing comparison. We're saying, okay, so it goes through and checks all of the buttons. If this condition is true, right, if index is less than rating, then we're gonna say it's true, meaning the button, this button right now that is clicked, is gonna be selected. So this condition here will always either be true or false, which is exactly what we need for this to work, to set our button selected or not. Okay, we could have done the same thing. We could have said, okay, if index is less than rating, right, then we can say button dot selected is true, else button dot selected is false. Exactly the same code, but look at this. Look at the beauty here. We didn't have to write all of this. We just did this because we know this returns true or false. So whatever this returns is going to be given to our button selected. So either true or false. All right. So we're starting now to writing really good code, getting those good habits of writing code. This is really good. This method here, of course, we need to call somewhere. We need to call this inside of our rating button tab, which has to be right after here. So say here, update button selection states. And there we have it. And we need to call this method again inside of our layout sub views. This should be the last thing also it's called there, because it's always updating and checking all of our button state and selecting things appropriately. It's also very important to update the button selection states when the view loads, not just when the rating changes. So that means when we go, let's go back up here at the top where it says rating here, we are going to add something else. Okay, say braces, curly braces there. Now we are going to do the following. We're going to say did set and then close like that. And then inside here, set needs layout. So this method here comes with our UI view where it allows us to go ahead and update our layouts and everything in it. Okay? And now this notation here may look very strange, so essentially we're just setting things up here. So we know our rating is equal to 0, and we are just adding this property here to also include this, what they call the property observer. So it just think of it of something in the background that is just observing, looking at things, what's happening in our canvas, in our code, and whenever it gets time to update something, it goes, calls it, and updates whatever we need. Okay, just think of it that way. Don't get caught up into the syntax here. That's all that's happening. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and run one more time now. Okay, let's click on one. So I found there's a typo here. So it starts say star. That means we have to change everywhere. All right, there we go. Okay, that's good. Star. The same here. A lot of typos, so that's something to look out for. Okay, that's good. It wouldn't matter really because I was consistent, but it's always nice to have things spelled out correctly. All right, so let's go ahead and give it a run. And we're not getting our star, so there's got to be something wrong here. Let's see what's going on. So this is being called because we see hello here. So if we're not getting the stars, it has to be where we're setting the actual stars. Everything is good here. How about the images? I think something is wrong here. It says field start instead of star. So that is the problem. So again, this just reminds you that you always have to make sure that the names are the same as what you have here, because if it's not the same, then well, nothing's going to show. So that's good. So it's got to be field star, not start. All right, let's go back here and just so we change that to star. Let's save one more time and run. Should not be able to click and see our stars. So click one, there we go. All right, and because of our very simple code here at the bottom where it says this one update button selection state here, if we click back, as you can see, the rest is also unselecting, right? So if you go to 4 and you go back to 3 and only 3 are, and back and forth. That's good. So things are actually working. Okay, just to make sure we have everything cleaned up here, let's go ahead and make sure, let's go to our, there we go, here we go. Now we already know that we are creating 5 and we have 5 stars here. Stars equal 5, so that's our variable. Instead of hard coding things here, programming good programming habits, let's just go ahead and use that stars. Okay, because that's a variable that holds 5, so that's really good. So in case we want to change and add more, we can just change in one place as opposed to going all over our code and changing those numbers. So this is just a little thing here. It's very important. So if you went ahead and ran again, nothing would change, but at least we'll know that our code is decently clean and we're using good programming habits. Now we need a way of connecting our view control here that we created, right, to our code. So if we go back to our main storyboard, let's stop here. Main storyboard here, we have this view here, but at the same time we need to connect that to the code, to our view controller code. That way we are able to then reference it. So let's go ahead to our assistant editor. So click on that. We need to go back and click on the code. And here at the top where it says manual, click on that and just say automatic, say view controller, and this is what's going to happen. We now have both code and our storyboard. So let's close down the left one so we have more space here. Okay, so what do we need to do? Of course, we are going to get a reference, so as a property, so click on that, click on our view here, control, and drag and drop right underneath there. This is going to be an outlet. We're going to call this rating control, and it's of type rating control, indeed, because that's the class we created earlier. And we're going to just go ahead and say connect, and there we go. So now we have a way of actually accessing our rating control in our view controller code. Let's go ahead, let's go ahead and clear that out. We don't need that anymore. So now we have, let's close this down too. So now we have our storyboard only. So what we need to do, we need to clean things up and kind of make them look a little bit better in terms of how things look on the screen. So the first thing we need to do, we are going to go and use our stack view, because all of this is inside of our stack view. In fact, if you go back, click to this left button there, you will see the stack view. That's what's containing all of our views here. Okay, that's good. So now we need to adjust a few things here. So we're going to go ahead and go to the attributes inspector here. So the fourth, and click on our stack view. Let's go find the alignment field here. So click on this. Let's go say centered. And look at that, everything is centered now. And let's get rid of this set default book here. We don't need that anymore. Okay, let's go ahead and delete this. This is a good habit to get into. Before you delete anything, go ahead and right click. So let's say we want to delete this set default button here because we don't need it anymore. I would select it and right click and look at here. You will see it says touch up inside and it says view controller set default text. So it's showing the connection that we have with our code here. So just disconnect everything, delete that, and then you can just go ahead and hit delete key, click on this and delete key, and there we go, it's gone. Right? It's very important you do that, because if you don't, you just delete in code, for instance, code and not actually deleting the connections, then you would get a lot of errors. So it's always a good habit to be safe and do that. Okay, so now we have everything there. And of course, let's go ahead and open up our code again. So let's open our left panel, go to our view, and let's delete that set default text that we had before. As you can see, there's no connection anymore because this circle is not filled out as this other one. Okay, so we can safely delete this because we have nothing to do with that anymore. So save, just to check, make sure things are good. Let's run one more time. And there it is. So it's looking very nice. Everything is still working. Okay, and we can still do like that and everything changes accordingly. That's good. Nice. And as you can see, the buttons are all nicely aligned, all side by side. So our application is starting to look really good in terms of the back end of things and the functionalities, as you can see. So we're able to now have the star system working, although we're not fetching any response and do the logic yet, but we have all of the bases covered here. We have the photo, so when you click, allows you to go and get the photo, and there we go, right? You can still go ahead and enter something here. In this case, since for some reason our keyboard is not showing, just go to hardware at the top and go to keyboard, toggle keyboard, and voila, you have our keyboard. So you can enter and it's populating correctly. That's good. So our app is working indeed. We'll continue working on this application in the next video.